Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of both the movie and Blu-ray for the film M3GAN, which came out this past year. I want to first give a shout out to Blumhouse and Universal also for sending me this review copy of the film. This is a movie that a lot of people in the comments section, when I was talking about the box office for this film, which was very, very successful, especially based on a very low budget, people were saying you should probably go see this. This actually is a film that's pretty good. I'd be interested to hear your take on it. And as you all know, I'm not the biggest fan of horror films in general, but when I found out that this was also from the same people that did The Black Phone, which was one of my favorite films of last year, it was one of those special honorary mention films from last year because it was so good, I was actually very intrigued by the actual concept, because essentially the movie itself is kind of a modern day take on basically the concept of Chucky, right? Of a doll that is meant for one purpose, but then taking over and becoming a little bit self-aware to the point of doing some pretty terrible things. It's kind of like a mixture of Chucky meets Twilight Zone's Talking Tina episode, if anyone's ever seen that, one of the creepiest episodes of all time, but then also kind of adapting itself to the modern age with AI technology as well. Like what happens when you designate a doll and you give it a primary directive, and then all of a sudden that doll starts to see other things, including really terrible, tragic things, as being a part of its primary directive. And so, speaking first about the Blu-ray itself, it is very well presented. Again, always appreciate when studios are going out of their way to make these films available with slipcovers on them. But also, what's really cool about this specific edition of the film, if you buy it on Blu-ray, is that it includes two different versions of the film also. It includes a unrated version, which is the version that I ended up watching, and then also the theatrical version as well. So if you wanted and liked the theatrical version, you have that option. But let's say you wanted a little bit more, the unrated version is also included on this as well, and includes a few extra moments, a few extra scenes, a few extra lines that, probably enhance the overall story and the overall tension of the story as well. I wasn't able to have the time to actually compare both those films. I'm sure there's tons of videos currently online where you can find a comparison between the theatrical and the unrated, but ultimately a lot of really good stuff on here. It also includes a new vision of horror, kind of again that behind the scenes and the mindset of what they're going for with this character, bringing life to M3GAN, how they were able to make this work, both with the use of practical effects, some CG elements, obviously the actual actress herself underneath it all, also getting hacked, again going into kind of that mindset and the technology behind AI as well. And so overall, as far as a release is concerned, this comes with not only the Blu-ray that has both editions of the film, it also has a DVD copy and also comes with a digital code. Now, talking about the actual movie itself, as I've mentioned, I'm not the biggest fan of horror films in general, but I can appreciate them for what they are. As you all know, I did reviews of Barbarian last year, which I thought was a very well done film. I did a review of Smile last year as well, which I thought was also a very well done film. And that's coming from someone who's not a part of the horror genre, or rather who's not a big fan of the horror genre. And so obviously I know that people who are, very much diehard into everything horror, everything thriller, are going to probably have a lot higher standards than I do. But when it comes to this film, I actually very much enjoyed it. Again, as you can see from a Metacritic score, it's a 6 out of 10. But again, I don't like the number scores as much as I do the grades, and so I'll give you my grade at the very end of the review. So the basic premise of the film is that there is a little girl who is the niece of a woman played by Allison Williams, who is a part of a giant tech firm that is basically developing dolls, and the dolls are meant to be very interactive, where they're meant to basically take over and be a part of your life, right? It's almost as if the dolls are meant to be the smartphone version for young kids, right? Instead of having a smartphone and a screen to look at all the time, they can look at and interact with these dolls. In addition to these dolls, there's also apps attached to them as well, and so it again kind of entices and connects all of these things together. But during the process where she is playing, this little girl is playing with her doll in the back and is trying to also deal with the fact that her parents are kind of fighting over the fact they're going on this ski trip, and it's very, very snowy, and so they're fighting over the road and trying to say, hey, please stop, and hey, pull over, this is really dangerous, etc. And ultimately, and this is really not spoiling much because this happens at the very beginning, her parents die in a car accident, and Allison Williams' character, the aunt, has to take over and become a mother figure, and she comes off as kind of that very typical modern day, understanding of what woman is, which is, there's no family, there's no kids, really independent, right, very successful in their career, but now has to figure out, okay, how do I become a parent? How do I become a mother to a child when I've not had this understanding before? All of my knowledge has been into basically marketing strategies of how do I appeal to this age demographic? How do I create toys for this demographic? And we see that basically motivates this character played by Allison Williams throughout the entirety of the film, trying to basically use the technological understanding that she has and very much a scientific mind to go into and try to help the mind of a child. And we can understand that does not work. And if you don't have empathy, if you don't have that built-in relationship, if you don't try to build into those relationships, it can be very difficult. So it's really cool to see the journey that Allison Williams' character goes on in this film, in addition to the young girl also, because she is dealing with grief. And then in the background of all of this, you have M3GAN. This is this new creation by Allison Williams. M3GAN is created under the radar by this company. She is the main designer behind it, working with a couple other people. The company does not know that they're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on this, project, basically trying to create the only doll that you'll ever need is essentially the way that they're trying to promote it. Eventually, the price tag on it is going to be $10,000. So again, they're trying to really push for this new AI technology in dolls. And of course, the way in which they test that is, Allison Williams' character of Gemma saying, hey, I have this niece who's just gone through a tragedy. Let me show you what this doll can do for children going through these different emotions, going through these different things. And of course, just like anyone would suspect, and as the trailer indicates, M3GAN is much more aware than what many people might suspect when it comes to AI. When the primary directive is, hey, keep the little girl happy, that means, hey, if there's someone who's threatening the little girl, if there's someone who is, posing a risk, that risk must be eliminated in various ways. And so there's some pretty gruesome deaths that happen in the film. And for those, again, I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of storytelling in general, but I think that they were effective for what they were. And I think that the real strength to this movie is actually the overall writing, because it's taking a very simplistic story, right? And taking a very simplistic horror thriller film, adding an element of sci-fi to it, as it says here as part of the genre is a sci-fi, again, technology that we just don't quite have as of yet. And really able to combine these all together in a very effective way and in a very effective formula. And that is, again, why I like this film as much as I do, because it is a very well done, very concise story, not a long film, about 90 minutes, about an hour 45, I think is what the extended version or the unrated version of the film is. And so it's not very long to get through. The film is very well paced. You don't really feel the length of the film at any point. And ultimately, you have a lot of really great moments on screen of Allison Williams showing that she actually is a very talented actress. Glad to see her kind of away from other films and other franchises. She unfortunately was in the Lena Dunham series. And that kind of is where she got her start. And it's really sad because that series is just so completely trash, but it's great to see her in movies like this where she's able to show that she actually has a very good amount of talent. In addition, the very young girl in the film also does a very good job, and then the girl that plays M3GAN also, even though there's clearly a lot of makeup and special effects and masks and whatever it is that they're gonna again be a part of the process, it is a very effective film for that very reason. As far as the actual complaints that I would have about the movie itself, because it's not a perfect movie, is that it definitely can feel tropic from time to time. As I mentioned previously, we can think about other films, whether it be a film like Chucky or whether it be going all the way back to the Twilight Zone episode of Talking Tina, right? This type of mentality has been there. So there's not a lot of surprises as far as when things start to go off the rails, what's going to happen by the very end of the movie. And even the very end, which opens up for, and they even have already greenlit a sequel to this movie, you already kind of see where that is going when you recognize the power that this little doll has. And so I definitely think that there are those moments where you're like, okay, you're clearly also trying to build a universe here, trying to sell and make a lot of money, etc. And again, that's kind of what movies are supposed to do. But also when it becomes obvious that that's what you're doing, especially at the very end of the movie, it kind of takes away from the very effective storytelling that exists throughout the process as well. The visual effects are actually pretty good. I think that uncanny valley effect for whenever there are CGI elements is actually done very well and effectively. There's a couple of moments where you're like, okay, clearly, this is CGI, especially in a couple of the death sequences. But overall, I would say that they are are done relatively well. And as you all know, I'm a pretty big stickler when it comes to CG. And so glad to see that they did kind of a mixture of CG and also of practical effects, much more leaning towards practical. At least that's what it seemed like to the naked eye. And so definitely going to be, going to praise it for that very reason. And again, this is a movie that I think is a good time. If you're a fan of horror films, thriller films, anything with creepy dolls, I think this is going to be for you. Luckily, it is not like the Annabelle franchise or any of those other franchises that deal with demonic elements. This is rather talking about kind of like the modern day understanding of, okay, we have AI, which in a certain way we could view as, if it is being used for marketing, if it is being used for trying to sell a product, it in that way can become corrupted and can be, in a way, become almost a demonic element in and of itself, because it has no empathy, it has no emotion behind it, it has no understanding of the human race, no appreciation for the human race. And so in that way, it's that, again, that sense of hatred that can exist within the demonic, but now within a completely thoughtless, for the most part thoughtless, as far as critical thinking is concerned, and very non-empathetic doll in M3GAN. So very much enjoy this film a lot more than I thought I would. Again, I can understand why this film did as well at the box office. Again, good, strong marketing campaign definitely helped with this film too. I don't know exactly where they're going to go with this franchise in the future. Again, they've already greenlit the sequel to M3GAN. And as we all know, when it comes to sequels, especially for films like this, I could see the film probably not living up to that of the first film, but I can say of the first film, it's a pretty good time. I'm going to give this film a B-. Again, a lot of strong elements in the film. The acting, I think, is pretty good. Some of the characters, especially the side characters, a part of the team of Allison Williams, for instance, are kind of just throwaway characters, very forgettable. I think that they could have done a little bit more to maybe, bring them in a little bit more, seeing that they did have a pretty big role to play in kind of the birth and creation of this character. Also, the actor that plays the head of the company and the head of the corporation is very focused on profits, and so that narrative within the film, it's like, yeah, we get it, giant corporations wanting nothing but profits, but then also the actor playing him, I think was a slightly, at least from the naked eye, seemed to be kind of on the green side of things, so wasn't that impressed by his performance. But other than those elements, I think the acting for the most part was pretty good. Story for the most part was also, again, not anything groundbreaking necessarily, except for the addition of AI to the story, but overall a very effective film. And so a B- I'm going to give to this movie. And as you can see, this is a film that's gotten some pretty positive ratings from Metacritic standards, from both critics and from audiences alike, and I can totally understand why that is the case. And so, again, are you going to go ahead and buy M3GAN on Blu-ray? As I said, if you like the film, then I would recommend getting it on Blu-ray, because physical media is just so much better. And also, this does include both versions of the film. And I know that a lot of times of the digital copies, and anytime you buy on iTunes or etc., we'll have those, but physical media is always better because they can't change this after the fact, and you also just get better quality in the first place. And the quality of this release is very, very good. So what are your thoughts about the film? Have you seen it? Are you buying it? Are you planning on buying it? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, like that fire button, honestly, and smash the rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my March Patreon, Subscribe Star, and local members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Chris from the 80s, who you can check out over his YouTube channel by the same name, Jaimir Irie Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange at Reviews, you can check out over at his YouTube channel, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Eagle Writer, Miss Martin Muses, and you can check her out at her YouTube channel by the same name also. To my Subscribe Star members, Matt317, you can check out over at his Twitch channel, Matt317, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can find out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer, Robert Barnes. Thank you all very much for supporting me at the Patreon level, Subscribe Star level, and locals level of Keeper the Bifrost and above. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream end every video. Make sure to check out the top link in the video description to find out more ways that you can support the channel, including ways to get access to a podcast and also ways to get access to giveaways that I do on the channel, and also, of course, to my coveted Chosen of Valhalla level as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.